Hello, this is Jon Speelman with the video version of this fortnight's column, and I'm just going to check first that I am recording, so we'll go to here, and yes I am, good. So I've entitled it It's a Terrible Pun, which I quite like, though it's given my wife Lindsay conniptions, can't be helped. I've called it Ovi-ready. I wasn't actually sure whether to call it Ovo-ready or Over-ready, but I've got Ovi, as in of eggs, and it's a prediction piece about the candidates, so I'm expecting to get egg on my face, which is the point of the dreadful title. So the candidates, rather, excuse me, is starting, well, it's actually it's starting in 2 days as I do this, and tomorrow as this appears. I'm doing the video bit on Saturday, and so we're all looking at Yekaterinburg and wondering what's going to happen. And I thought I'd stuck my tuppence in. It's more than a year since the first half, which ended sometime at the end of March 2020. Can't remember the exact day at the moment, but I mean it's a year and 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a completely different tournament, but it's a handicap race because well, the 2 leaders have a point more than the 4 in the middle and 2 points more than the 2 guys at the end, which is a hell of a lot actually. And okay, everybody knows what the scores are, I think. I mean, it's been reprised a million times. Anyway, so there's Nepo, excuse me, and Vache. I don't know why I've something in my mouth, in my throat. It's something to do with COVID. I think it's a bit of cheese or something, which I've just eaten. They're the 2 leaders. And I've said Nepo's had quite a good year. He won the Russian Championship over the board, which I think is the most relevant thing, really. The over the board games. And he did okay online. And just recently he lost to Giri in the final of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, but he beat Magnus Carlsen himself on the way. And what he did do in those games was, when Carlsen overpressed, he didn't think, wow, I've drawn, that's fantastic. He thought, now let's go on and kill the guy. So that was quite impressive, and it reminded me of Anatoly Karpov in his pomp, as I said. MVL hasn't had a great year. He came second to last in Vacanze. He only won 1 game. It wasn't really that worthwhile to give it here. And the main thing that happened in Vik is, I think, his Najdorf. One of his great strengths has been this terrifying defence against 1e4, the Najdorf, which has really put people off, because he scored so well with it for so many years. But in Vik he actually lost twice in the poison pool. I didn't mention he also lost to Giri in a different system. So his Najdorf got battered, and he's got to decide what to do about that. Okay, he's had a year, and he's had 3 months since Vik. But he has to decide whether he's going to repair it, and of course you can repair openings tremendously, but you are a bit of a target, or you can, sorry, I've just noticed one of my many typos, or he's going to run to one or other escape pods, and we'll see. There are 4 further back. There's Caruana and Giri and Alexander Grishchuk and Wang Hao. I think Caruana is the clear favourite of those. He's the strongest. I mean, he's got the highest rating of those. He's the strongest player, really, of those as well. And if he got on a roll, he'd have quite decent chances of qualifying. Giri's been doing very well. He won the Carlsen Invitational. He's made himself a much more aggressive player than he used to be. He used to squeeze weaker players quite a lot and draw a lot, and he's much more scary now. I think that Grishchuk, I said, well, he's quite enigmatic in his chess. He reminds me a bit of me. I mean, obviously he's better version, but of the fact that he likes to wind his opponents up. Fantastic player, but I think he might lose probably one game too many to qualify or something. And there's Wang Hao, who's completely the opposite. I think he was establishing himself a year ago. Of course, he'd had the year to become the established man who got 50% quite easily last year. But if he's going to qualify, he's going to have to win more games than he would have done otherwise. Then you've got Ding Liren and Kirill Alexienko. And I basically said, well, Alexienko has about as much chance, well, maybe slightly more chance than Leicester City did when they won the Premiership, the English, the football. And did I actually say less? I may have been. I think that's Alexei. But I mean, I think it's 1 in 50,000 or so. I mean, it's very, very small anyway. I suppose he has 1 in 100 actually. And Ding has a chance if he beats Wang in the first round, wins 2 or 3 games, then he has a real chance, because he's another guy. He and Caruana are the 2 guys who could go on a roll. Right, I put some numbers randomly assigned, but they do add up to 100. I gave Nepo 27%, Caruana and MVL, or MVL and Caruana 20, Giri 15, Grishchuk 10, Ding and Wang Hao 4, and Alexienko 0, which means it's less than 1 in 100, I think. And there we are. And then, after doing all this magnificent work, and of course, in particular, the percentages are completely random numbers, really, I stuck a few games in which I thought were relevant. I've got Caruana beating Vachier-Lagrave in Vakanze in the Najdorf. I've got Nepo winning against Sergei Karjakin in the Russian Championship. And I've got one of Giri's wins from Vike, and actually the best win that Giri had in Vike, was against MVL. But it's, I don't want to persecute the Frenchman. I mean, it's quite a fairy story that he got in at the last moment. I mean, okay, he's a really strong player, but the guy who gets in at the last moment is the leader at the halfway stage, so that's pretty fantastic. But I think he's, as I said, I think he's had a bad year, and that won't help him. Anyway, there are these 3 games. So this is Caruana, who plays Bishop G5 against the Najdorf. Okay, the question is whether the Najdorf is this terrifying monster that nobody wants to fight against, or a target. And Grandelius had beaten MVL 2 rounds earlier in the poison pawn. Okay, you can go h6 and queen b6 as well. That's a completely different line. Everything is completely specific in the poison pawn because it's so sharp. And Grandelius had done this one. This is Bishop b6 idea that they started having. And the problem, this is all fine. But in this position, after rook f4, the guy played, MVL played queen c6, and he should go knight h5 and then bring his knight back again. And that apparently is fine. That's what the engines say, and I have no particular reason to disbelieve them. But I have reason not to disbelieve them. But he actually went queen c6 and he got queen e6, I'm sorry, and he got splatted. Got really splatted by Grandelius. It was a horrible game. Funny that c4 is not a move that the engines much like. It's such an absolutely obvious move. It screams out to be played for a person. What actually happened was something very bad occurred. Rook f6 was a good move. I suppose I could give that an exclam. I suppose, well, I'm not even going to bother. Takes, knight takes, king f7, queen takes pawn, bishop g7, and something, knight h5 or something does he play? Not sure. Oh, he plays knight g4. I'll stick it in, I'll stick the variation in. Sorry, check, check, here, check, here, here, rook g8, knight h6 check. King to there, takes, and the pawn ending's winning. Okay, so that was quite an interesting game. Now what happened was that Caruana played a different move, bishop e2. I'm not your man for poison pawn theory, but I know what happened is interesting. And here, MVI had to decide which way to recapture. He took with the e-pawn. It just turns out this is bad. One of Caruana's engines will have gone ping and said, we can play e6 in that position. It causes an accident. So the question is whether c takes d5 is playable. And I believe that you should go bishop b7 here. Rook b3, check, bishop f2, queen to there. I believe this is the right way to play. Now the engines claim that rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes f5 is okay. Partly, of course, because if pawn takes pawn on pass on queen h2 mate. Let's just put that in 2 question marks. Queen to there. There we go. You can see I'm not a bullet player. Oh, I had a little whinge about bullet, didn't I? I said that in the introduction that Caruana, okay, he's not done that well at the internet chess. 15-minute chess or something has some relevance to classical chess. Blitz a little bit, and I call bullet a video game. I hope I don't get hate mail as a result, but I mean it is. Oh, and then also I pointed out that the boys, the really macho boys like Firouzja, are now playing quite a lot of 30-second chess. I noticed on another site. And I thought, my God, that really is quick. I know people do it, but Firouzja can almost do it. Don't think anybody else in the world can. I don't think even Magnus can really play decent 30-second chess. Anyway, e6 was played, and this vicious blow destroys black's position. And I gave some lines: f takes, f5, e5 castles. That's one way you can win, I think. You just win all the pieces, really. It's just horrible. It's all horrible. I don't know if rook b8, I assume you just go rook f1 or something. Or no, you've got queen d6 check over. You can go rook takes rook and queen d6 and queen e7 mate. That was one line. And there was bishop b6 castles, queen c5, king over bishop. This is a line. It's just there are so many disgusting things that can happen. That, for instance, is one line. These are for examples, obviously. And this is what actually happened. So it starts with white a pawn down and the queen's off the board, but on the other hand, black's position is a purulent wreck due to the enormous e6 pawn. And he got beaten up quite badly. I don't know if you could try to play g6 here. Is g6 any better? What does the engine say? g6, do you play bishop d4 or something? Bishop d4. Okay. King e7. Bishop f3. And it's just a horrible position. I mean, it just doesn't work. Okay. So what happened was that poor MVL got splatted, basically. They reached this position and he got killed, obviously. I mean, their moves were played, but they weren't of great relevance to anybody. They didn't add to the gaiety of nations, or certainly not the gaiety of black's position. And he resigned. So that was the first game. And it's relevant because, I mean, okay, of course MVL can repair this particular line. But if the poisoned pawn and the knight are for a target, he has to make this decision. Second game is Nepo playing Karjakin in the Russian Championship. And I said I originally wrote my own notes and overlaid with some chess-based ones on top. I tend to think of Nepo as a fairly eclectic player. Sorry, eclectic. I hope that's right. I can read. So he tends to play a player who is flexible in his opening choices. But here, after he got involved in a serious opening discussion with Karjakin and came out on top. So he normally plays e4 as well, or has done recently anyway, over the last year. f3 is perhaps the main line. Can play c5, d5, there are a million games. Did Carlsen play knight c6 recently, I think, possibly? d5 is sort of normal. If you take okay. And I didn't realise I'd given so much of this. I didn't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. e4. I've got the right copy of this, haven't I? I've got this copy in here, yeah, because I've got a copy in other places. Of course, e5 is also playable. It's been played. But I mean, okay, they were following a game Karjakin had. And Karjakin had at least a couple of blitz games with Vijay Gujarati and chess.com blitz. I think he'd played both a6 and knight bd7. And here Nepo played a new move. It's a completely obvious move, of course, bishop f4. It defends the important pawn. But for some reason it hadn't been played. Previously, knight b5 had been tried. Okay, and they played some moves. And here Karjakin made a mistake. He thought he was going to be able to equalise with bishop f3, so he thought, okay, I'll bail out. It'll be okay, I'll have a nice position. But in fact, after this, a6, a5 takes here, take, knight to there. This is just good, I think, for... Basically, this position is very good for white. And there are some lines. And he went bishop d6, queen to there, and got tied up in knots. Now he basically... so what other moves are there? There's bishop takes bishop, rook takes rook, and there's bishop b7, presumably knight c7. Just when I say that, I should at least point this out. Bishop b7, knight c7, yeah. Okay, plus over the line, we'll say, to be polite. To black. Okay, so what happened was they played some moves. It's a nice move. And basically all white's pieces are on the king side. So although black has quite enough pieces, he's in big trouble. He's being attacked very viciously. So what happens to queen takes a5? Knight e7 check, I see. Knight e7 check wins material. And I should have given that, really. Queen takes, knight checks, exclam. I shouldn't just have said the only move, okay. Because I hadn't even really noticed. I just knew this was all happening. Queen to there's a very strong move. If queen c8, then bishop b5, and you can't play f6 because of knight e7 checks, that's a catastrophe. And the man tried taking, but basically rook e8, bishop c7 is good, I think. Can you go... e1 check, king f2. And this is winning pretty easily. Bishop takes b6 is a good move here. Because you're going to... well, you can't take it, obviously, when you think about it. Otherwise, we win some more pawns. So we'll give that an exclam. So what happened was he went there, but now king e2. Fell, because of course maybe untake that. And there we are. Nice game against a very tough opponent by Nepo. Third game, I've got a Giri game. As I said, I think Giri's game against MVL was better than this, but I didn't want to be too down on MVL because I think he has a reasonable chance of qualifying, but he'll have to raise his game from how he's been in the last few months. This is Giri's playing fairly non-chess in the opening, really, I'd say. And I said something like, obviously either side can play this position, and with best play it should be round about equal, which is fairly clear, I think. And he could have played a5 actually to stop c4 for the moment. Wouldn't have been a stupid thing to do, but in fact he went f6. Now he got to take, and he's got a tiny little bit because he's got some white squares. He's maybe going to be able to play bishop c4. I mean, it's something. At least it's a position to play. And c4, I don't know. Yeah, otherwise he loses e-pawn, of course. Can't take with the queen because the bishop hangs on e7, which is a shame because otherwise you'd be absolutely fine. And it's a little bit better for white. I mean, engines don't care. In fact, I'm asking an engine, queen takes, bishop takes, and if knight g5, there's some strong move. But I mean, promote variation, presumably that should be. Am I going to g5? Yeah, is a better, and it happens that this is okay for black. But I mean, you know, it's really difficult. It's all really difficult. What happened was they got to this ending, and although it's only completely equal material, it's a little bit uncomfortable for black because of the weak f pawn, because he can't get in bishop f6 and g6 and rook f7. If he could get all of that in, then he'd just sit there and nothing would happen at all. If the bishop and knight weren't on the board, then he might on a very good day win the f5 pawn, but nobody would expect white to win. But with the knight against the bishop, it can be played, and an engine goes, poof, this is nonsense, but it's not much fun. He's perhaps trying to keep his rook in f6. I mean, it's just difficult. I think d4 is probably a better square. You can take this. This is equal, I think, more or less. This one. Okay, but what happened was that he squeezed him. Really unpleasant to play. I mean, I think probably f4 was a bit of a mistake. I don't know. What does the engine think? g4, f3 check, king g3. And you can pick up this pawn later. You don't have a rook going towards a1 because of the bishop being on a1. If it was somewhere else, you might at least be able to annoy him. And bad things are happening. Quite sure that move. Guy blundered. After rook f7, take, check here, knight f3, the game continues. As unpleasant but still presumably tenable, I suppose presumably tenable. I mean, probably you can arrange to play bishop takes knight, or you can make it difficult not. The rook's active, everybody's in reasonably decent squares. Of course, once you do go rook bishop takes knight, you might have a problem with rook g7 check or check and rook h8. Okay, I'm going to guess that if God played God, God would draw as black, but God wouldn't be very pleased with his lot. What happened was, in fact, that the guy went bishop b2, and that happened, and that is a bit of a blow, because I mean you can't play once you've, there's nothing to do once you've lost that pawn, and if king takes, there is a mate. So, what can one say? Giri's showing determination and showing that Carlsen, sorry, that you don't need a big advantage to win. Right. Well, I hope that we hope that it's fun. It'll be very exciting, the candidates. I'll be streaming tomorrow. I'll be streaming some days. Sorry, yeah, on Monday anyway. I'll do some of the rounds. Obviously, there'll be people even better qualified than me. People like Anand, I believe, is doing one day on one of the sites. I mean, you know, the world and his dog will be commentating, and I hope that I'll be the bit of the world that some people will sometimes watch when they want codgerly commentary. Okay, I'm going to stop now. I'm just checking again. We're still there, and I'm going to stop. Cheers. Enjoy it.